name is Emily Harper, and at 32 I've built a life I'm proud of in the sleepy little town of Willow Creek, nestled in the rolling hills of upstate New York. It's the kind of place where everyone knows your name, where front porches are adorned with rocking chairs, and where secrets, if they exist, are buried deep beneath layers of polite smiles. I've always loved hosting dinner parties. There's something magical about filling my cozy craftsman-style home with laughter, clinking glasses, and the aroma of home-cooked meals. But one night, one single fateful night, changed everything. It turned my sanctuary into a haunted memory, leaving me chasing shadows and questions that refused to let me sleep. It was a balmy August evening in 2024, the kind where the air hums with cicadas and the sunset paints the sky in hues of peach and lavender. I'd been planning this dinner party for weeks, pouring my heart into every detail. The guest list was small but cherished. My best friend Claire, a vivacious 34-year-old school teacher with a laugh that could light up a room. Her husband Nate, a 35-year-old carpenter who always had a story to tell. Sophie, a 29-year-old artist whose quirky charm made her impossible not to love. And Ryan, a 33-year-old lawyer who'd grown up with me in Willow Creek. Then there was the new guy, Lucas Bennett, a 28-year-old who'd moved to town just a month ago. Lucas was an enigma, quiet with piercing green eyes that seemed to see right through you. I'd met him at the local bookstore where he'd been flipping through a worn copy of The Great Gatsby. Something about his reserved demeanor intrigued me, and I thought inviting him might help him feel at home. The day of the party, I was a whirlwind of energy. I spent hours in the kitchen, roasting a rosemary-crusted leg of lamb, tossing a vibrant summer salad with heirloom tomatoes, and baking a peach cobbler that filled the house with a warm, sugary glow. My dining room table was a masterpiece, set with my grandmother's bone china, flickering candles, and a centerpiece of wildflowers I'd picked from the meadow behind my house. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting golden rays through my lace-curtained windows, I felt a surge of anticipation. This was going to be a night to remember. My friends arrived one by one, their voices mingling with the soft jazz playing in the background. Claire and Nate brought a bottle of Pinot Noir. Sophie showed up with a playful grin and a sketch she'd drawn of my house, and Ryan bear-hugged me, teasing me about my fancy table settings. Lucas was the last to arrive, dressed in a crisp white shirt and dark jeans, his expression a mix of gratitude and hesitation. "Thanks for inviting me, Emily," he said, his voice low, almost shy. I waved off his thanks, ushering him inside with a smile. Dinner was perfection. The lamb was tender, the wine flowed freely, and the conversation sparkled. Claire regaled us with tales of her third-grader's antics, while Nate recounted a disastrous attempt to build a treehouse for their son. Sophie shared her latest art project, a series of paintings inspired by abandoned places, and Ryan chimed in with a hilarious story about a client who'd tried to pay him in chickens. Lucas, though, was quieter than the rest. He listened intently, offering a small smile here and there, but his eyes seemed distant, like he was only half present. I caught myself watching him, wondering what lay beneath his guarded exterior. As we cleared the plates and moved to the living room with glasses of dessert wine, the mood shifted subtly. Lucas grew even more withdrawn, his fingers tightening around his glass. I tried to draw him out, asking about his life before Willow Creek. "Not much to tell," he said, his tone clipped. "Just needed a change." His abruptness stung, but I brushed it off, chalking it up to nerves. Maybe he wasn't used to being around so many people. Then, without warning, Lucas's demeanor changed entirely. His face paled, his jaw clenched, and his eyes darted toward the window as if he'd seen something in the darkness beyond. The room fell silent, the air thick with unease. "You okay, man?" Ryan asked, leaning forward. Lucas didn't answer. Instead, he stood abruptly, his chair scraping against the hardwood floor. "I have to go," he muttered, his voice barely audible. Before I could protest, he was out the door, slamming it behind him with a force that rattled the windows. We sat there, stunned, the echo of the door lingering like a ghost. "What the hell was that about?" Nate asked, breaking the silence. Claire frowned, her brow furrowed with concern. "Maybe he's not feeling well," she offered, but her voice lacked conviction. Sophie glanced at me, her eyes wide. "Did you see his face?" "He looked scared." I nodded, my stomach twisting. Something was wrong, terribly wrong. The rest of the evening felt hollow. We tried to recapture the warmth of earlier, but Lucas's sudden exit hung over us like a storm cloud. One by one, my friends said their goodbyes, their hugs tighter than usual, their smiles forced. Alone in my quiet house, I cleaned up in a daze, replaying the night in my mind. What had spooked Lucas? Had I said something to upset him? The questions gnawed at me, refusing to let go. The next morning, I couldn't shake the unease. Lucas's departure felt like a puzzle piece that didn't fit. I decided to check on him, hoping to ease my mind. His house was a modest rental on the edge of town, a small bungalow surrounded by overgrown grass. When I knocked, there was no answer. His beat-up Honda was in the driveway, but the windows were dark, the curtains drawn. I called his name, my voice trembling in the still morning air. Nothing. A chill crept up my spine and I left, promising myself I'd try again later. Days passed and Lucas remained a ghost. I texted him, called him, even stopped by his house again. Nothing. My friends hadn't heard from him either. Claire suggested he might have left town, but I couldn't accept that. Not without answers. Finally, I called the Willow Creek police. Officer Daniels, a gruff man in his 50s, listened patiently as I explained. "We'll look into it," he said, but his tone suggested he thought I was overreacting. Still, they searched Lucas's house, questioned neighbors, followed every lead. It was as if he'd vanished into thin air. Weeks turned into months and the mystery deepened. The police found no trace of Lucas, no credit card activity, no phone records, nothing. Willow Creek buzzed with rumors. He'd skipped town. He'd been in trouble with the law. He'd been taken. I tried to move on, but the memory of that night clung to me like damp fog. I'd lie awake, staring at the ceiling, wondering if I'd missed something, a sign, a clue, anything. One evening, desperate for answers, I started digging into Lucas's past. I scoured social media, local records, anything I could find. What I uncovered was sparse but unsettling. Lucas had moved to Willow Creek after a messy breakup in Chicago. He'd been a graphic designer, but he'd quit his job abruptly before coming here. He had no close friends in town, no family nearby. The more I learned, the more I realized how little I'd known him. He'd been a stranger, invited into my home, my life. Then came the noises. It started one night as I sat alone in my living room, the TV muted, a glass of wine untouched in my hand. A faint rustling outside like footsteps crunching through leaves. My heart skipped a beat. I crept to the window, peering into the darkness, but saw nothing. Just the swaying branches of the oak tree in my yard. I told myself it was a raccoon, maybe a stray cat, but the unease lingered. The noises continued over the next few nights, soft whispers, a creak on the porch, the unmistakable feeling of eyes on me. I'd wake in a cold sweat, my pulse racing, convinced someone was watching. I installed a security camera, but it caught nothing, just empty shadows. My friends tried to reassure me. "You're stressed, Em," Claire said, squeezing my hand. "It's just your imagination." But I knew better. Something was out there, waiting. One stormy night, driven by a mix of fear and determination, I returned to Lucas's house. The police had long since cleared it, but I couldn't shake the feeling that I'd missed something. The bungalow felt abandoned, its windows like hollow eyes. Using a spare key I'd found tucked under a planter, a reckless move, I know, I slipped inside. The air was stale, heavy with dust. I moved through the rooms, my flashlight casting eerie beams across the walls. In the bedroom I found it, a small leather-bound journal wedged behind a dresser. My hands trembled as I opened it. The pages were filled with Lucas's tight, hurried scrawl, fragments of thoughts, fears, nightmares. He wrote about feeling out of place, like Willow Creek was a trap disguised as a haven. His entries grew darker, more frantic. "It's always there," one read. "In the corner of my eye, in the silence. It knows I'm here." The final entry, dated the night of my dinner party, sent ice through my veins. "I saw it tonight at her house. It's coming for me. I have to run." I stumbled back, my breath shallow. What had Lucas seen? What had been in my house that night? I took the journal to the police, but it offered no answers. Just more questions. Officer Daniels sighed, rubbing his temples. "Could be he was unstable," he said. "People see things when they're scared." But I wasn't convinced. Lucas's fear had been real, palpable, and now it was seeping into me. Life in Willow Creek went on, but I was a shadow of myself. I stopped hosting dinner parties, my dining room table gathering dust. My friends worried, but their words felt hollow. How could I explain the dread that clung to me, the certainty that something was unfinished? I'd sit by my window at night, staring into the dark, listening for those whispers, those footsteps. Sometimes I'd swear I saw a figure, just a flicker, gone when I blinked. One night, nearly a year later, I woke with a start, my heart pounding. The house was silent, but the air felt charged, electric. I grabbed my phone, its glow harsh against the darkness. 3:17 a.m. Then I heard it, a soft knock at the front door. My blood ran cold. I crept downstairs, my bare feet silent on the hardwood. Through the peephole I saw nothing but empty night. But as I turned away, the knock came again, louder, insistent. I froze, my hand on the doorknob. Every instinct screamed not to open it, but the need for answers burned hotter. I swung the door open, the cold air rushing in. The porch was empty, but there on the welcome mat was a single page torn from a journal. Lucas's handwriting stared back at me. "It's not gone. It's with you now." I slammed the door, my knees buckling. I haven't slept soundly since. Willow Creek is still my home, but it's no longer a sanctuary. I keep the journal locked in a drawer, its pages a reminder of the night that broke me. I don't know what Lucas saw, what he ran from, or what he left behind, but I feel it, watching, waiting, its presence a weight I can't escape. Sometimes in the quiet I whisper his name, hoping for a sign. But the only answer is silence, and the endless, gnawing question, what was at my dinner party that night? My name is Karen Walsh, and at 45 I thought I'd seen enough of life to trust my instincts. I've raised my son Ethan mostly on my own in the quiet town of Maplewood, Vermont, a place where picket fences and potluck dinners are the norm, and trouble feels like it belongs in someone else's story. Ethan was 22, a bright kid with a quick smile and a knack for fixing cars, just starting to find his way in the world. I was proud of him, but like any mother, I worried, especially when he stayed out late with friends. One night a year ago, my world tilted on its axis, and I learned that danger doesn't always come from strangers. Sometimes it wears the face of someone you trust. It was a chilly October evening in 2024, the kind where the air smells of fallen leaves and wood smoke. I'd spent the day grading papers. I teach history at Maplewood High, and by 10 p.m., I was ready for bed. Ethan had texted earlier saying he was grabbing drinks with friends at Rusty's, the local dive bar. Home by midnight, he'd promised, and I'd nodded to myself, trusting him to keep his word. But as I slipped into my flannel pajamas and curled up with a book, a nagging unease settled in my chest. Call it a mother's intuition, but something felt off. I must have dozed off because the next thing I knew, the front door creaked open, jolting me awake. My heart thudded as I glanced at the clock. 1:47 a.m. I threw off the covers and hurried downstairs, my bare feet cold against the hardwood. In the dim glow of the living room lamp, I saw him, Ethan, slumped against his friend Caleb, barely conscious. His dark hair was mussed, his flannel shirt half untucked, and his eyes were glassy, unfocused. Caleb, a broad-shouldered 23-year-old with an easy grin, was holding him up like it was no effort at all. "Sorry, Mrs. Walsh," Caleb said, his voice steady despite the late hour. Ethan had a few too many, didn't want him driving. His hazel eyes met mine, calm and reassuring, and I felt a rush of gratitude. Caleb had been Ethan's friend since high school, always the responsible one, the guy who'd drive everyone home after a party. I'd always liked him, trusted him. "Thanks, Caleb," I said, my voice thick with worry. "Let's get him upstairs." Together we maneuvered Ethan to his room, his head lolling as he mumbled nonsense. I tugged off his sneakers and pulled a quilt over him, brushing a lock of hair from his forehead. He looked so young, so vulnerable, and my heart ached. Caleb lingered in the doorway, watching silently. "He'll be okay," he said finally, flashing that familiar grin. "I'll check on him tomorrow." I nodded, forcing a smile. "You're a good friend, Caleb. Drive safe." He tipped his head and left, the front door clicking shut behind him. I sat by Ethan's bed for a while, listening to his steady breathing, trying to shake the unease that clung to me like damp fog. Eventually, I crawled back to my own bed, but sleep didn't come easy. Something about the night felt wrong, though I couldn't pinpoint why. The next morning, Ethan stumbled into the kitchen, bleary-eyed and sheepish. "Sorry, Mom," he muttered, pouring coffee. "Guess I overdid it." He didn't remember much, just shots at Rusty's, laughter, music. I lectured him gently about pacing himself, but life slipped back to normal. Work, school, the rhythm of Maplewood. It all carried on, and that night faded into the background. I didn't think about Caleb much except to feel grateful he'd been there. Then a year later, everything changed. It was a crisp September evening in 2025, and I was curled up on the couch, half watching the local news while sipping chamomile tea. Ethan was out again, this time at a concert in Burlington with new friends from his auto shop job. The house was quiet, the only sound the faint hum of the refrigerator. I was about to turn off the TV when a breaking news alert flashed across the screen, the anchor's voice sharp with urgency. This just in. A young man was found dead in a motel room at the Pineview Inn earlier today, she said, her face grim. The victim, whose identity has not been released, was reportedly checked into the motel last night by a friend. Police are now searching for the friend who is considered a person of interest. My stomach dropped. The Pineview Inn was just off Route 7, a seedy place known for transients and trouble. I leaned forward, my tea forgotten, as the anchor continued. Witnesses report seeing the suspect leaving the motel around dawn. Authorities have released this sketch. A drawing appeared on the screen, a young man with short hair, a strong jaw and piercing eyes. My breath caught. It looked like Caleb. Number it couldn't be. I grabbed my phone, my hands trembling as I dialed Ethan. It rang 4 times before he picked up, his voice groggy. "Mom? What's up?" "Turn on the news," I said, my words tumbling out. "Channel 5 now." I heard rustling, then the faint sound of a TV. A moment later, Ethan's voice came back, sharp with shock. "Is that Caleb?" "I don't know," I admitted, my heart pounding, "but we need to call the police." We hung up and I dialed 911, my fingers clumsy on the keypad. When the dispatcher answered, I explained everything. Ethan's drunken night, Caleb bringing him home, the sketch on the news. She assured me an officer would be over soon. 20 minutes later, 2 detectives sat in my living room, their badges glinting under the lamplight. Detective Monroe, a wiry woman in her 40s, took notes as I recounted that night a year ago. Ethan, who'd rushed home from the concert, filled in what he could. "Caleb was my friend," he said, his voice cracking. "We'd hang out all the time, pool at Rusty's, fixing cars, just chilling. He was normal." The detectives exchanged a glance. "We'll need you both to come to the station tomorrow," Monroe said. "Anything you remember could help." They left, and I sat in silence, the weight of the night pressing down on us. I reached for his hand, but he pulled away, his jaw tight. "What if it's him, Mom?" he whispered. "What if he's a monster?" I didn't have an answer. That night I barely slept, my mind replaying every interaction with Caleb. His easy laugh, his steady gaze, the way he'd carried Ethan like a brother. Could I have missed something? A darkness hidden behind that smile? The next day at the station, we learned the truth, or part of it. The victim was a 24-year-old named Tyler Hayes, a drifter who'd been in Maplewood for a few weeks. He'd been found strangled, his body left in a motel room littered with empty beer cans. Witnesses confirmed Tyler had been drinking with a guy matching Caleb's description the night before. The police weren't calling Caleb a suspect yet, but they wanted him for questioning. "He's gone off the grid," Detective Monroe told us. "No phone, no credit cards. We're looking." Maplewood buzzed with gossip. At the grocery store, the diner, even my classroom, people whispered about the motel killer. Ethan withdrew, spending hours in his room. His usual spark dimmed. I tried to reach him, but he'd just shake his head, his eyes haunted. "I trusted him," he said one night, his voice raw. "I let him in our house. I felt it too, the betrayal, the guilt. I'd welcomed Caleb, thanked him, believed he was one of the good ones. Now every creak in the house made me jump. Every shadow seemed to hide his face. I started checking the locks obsessively, my sleep fractured by nightmares of Ethan in that motel room, Caleb's hands around his throat. Weeks passed and the news grew relentless. Reporters camped outside the Pineview Inn, digging into Tyler's life, speculating about the killer. Then one evening, Ethan called me from the shop, his voice trembling. "Mom, turn on the TV." I fumbled for the remote, my heart in my throat. The anchor's face was somber. "Breaking news. Authorities have identified a suspect in the Pineview Inn murder. Caleb Morrow, age 23, is wanted in connection with the death of Tyler Hayes. Morrow is also a person of interest in 2 similar cases in neighboring counties." 2 similar cases. My knees buckled and I sank onto the couch. The screen showed Caleb's photo. Not the sketch, but a real image from his driver's license. Those hazel eyes, once so warm, now stared back cold and empty. I clutched my phone, dialing Ethan again. "Come home," I said, "please." That night we sat in the kitchen, the lights blazing, neither of us able to eat. Ethan's hands shook as he spoke. "Mom, do you think if I hadn't gotten drunk that night, would I—" He couldn't finish, but I knew what he meant. Would he have been next? The question hung between us, heavy and suffocating. I wanted to say no, to promise he was safe, but the words stuck in my throat. Instead, I pulled him close, his head resting on my shoulder like when he was a boy. "You're here," I whispered. "That's what matters." The police found Caleb 3 months later, holed up in a rundown trailer in New Hampshire. He dyed his hair, grown a beard, but they knew it was him. The arrest was all over the news, Maplewood's dark secret laid bare. The trial was a nightmare, weeks of testimony, gruesome details, photos I couldn't unsee. Caleb had lured Tyler to the motel, gotten him drunk, then killed him in a rage. The other cases were eerily similar: young men, alcohol, a sudden, brutal end. The prosecution painted Caleb as a predator, charming and calculating. The defense claimed he'd snapped, driven by a troubled past. I didn't care about excuses, I just wanted him gone. He was sentenced to life without parole, his face expressionless as the gavel fell. Ethan watched the verdict on TV, his fists clenched. "It's over," he said, but his voice was hollow. I nodded, but I knew better. Some wounds don't heal, they scar. Maplewood tried to move on, but Ethan and I carried the weight. He threw himself into work, avoiding Rusty's, avoiding friends. I saw the pain in his eyes, the fear that lingered. I wasn't much better. Every knock at the door made my heart race. Every late-night call sent me spiraling. We talked about that night sometimes, the night Caleb brought him home. "I should have seen it," Ethan would say, his voice breaking. I'd shake my head, tears burning. None of us did. One night, months after the trial, I found a letter slipped under our door. No stamp, no address, just my name in neat, unfamiliar handwriting. My hands trembled as I opened it. Inside was a single sentence: "You were lucky." No signature, no clue who sent it. I burned it in the sink, watching the flames curl the paper to ash, but the words stayed with me. A chilling reminder of how close we'd come to losing everything. Ethan's slowly rebuilding piece by piece. He's dating a sweet girl from Burlington, talking about moving there someday. I'm trying too, grading papers, planting tulips, forcing myself to smile. But Maplewood feels different now, its charm tainted by shadows. I keep Caleb's photo tucked in a drawer, a warning to trust my gut. And every night as I lock the doors, I whisper a quiet prayer. For Ethan, for us, and for the boy we thought we knew, whose darkness nearly stole it all. My name is Mia Reynolds, and at 25 I thought I was fearless. Growing up in the small town of Cedar Hollow, Ohio, I'd always been the one to chase thrills, sneaking into the old quarry with friends, racing bikes down Dead Man's Hill, or telling ghost stories by bonfire light until we scared ourselves silly. There was something about the unknown that called to me, a pull I couldn't resist. But one night, a year ago, I learned that some thrills come with a price. Some places hold secrets that don't let go, and some shadows follow you home. It was late September 2024, the air crisp with the promise of fall. Cedar Hollow was quiet that night, its streets bathed in the soft glow of street lights, the leaves just starting to turn gold. I was restless, the kind of restless that makes your skin itch. My best friends, Tyler, a lanky 26-year-old bartender with a devil-may-care grin. Ellie, a 24-year-old nursing student whose sarcasm hit a heart of gold. And Noah, a 27-year-old mechanic who'd been my crush since high school. We're sprawled in my tiny apartment, bored out of our minds. We'd already binged a horror movie, but it hadn't scratched the itch. "Let's do something," I said, tossing a popcorn kernel at Tyler. He caught it in his mouth, smirking. "Like what, Reynolds?" "Rob a bank?" Noah chuckled, his dark eyes catching mine. "How about a drive? Nowhere special, just out." His voice had that easy calm I loved, the kind that made any idea sound good. Ellie perked up, brushing her auburn hair from her face. "Only if we blast my playlist." And so we piled into Tyler's beat-up Chevy pickup, the one he swore was vintage. The truck smelled of oil and pine air freshener, its seats worn soft from years of use. Ellie claimed shotgun, fiddling with the radio until it crackled with indie rock. Noah and I squeezed into the back, our knees brushing, sending a flutter through me I tried to ignore. The night was ours, and as we rolled out of Cedar Hollow, the open road felt like freedom. We drove aimlessly, windows down, the cool air whipping through the cab. The moon hung low, full and pale, casting the fields in a silvery glow. We sang off-key, laughed at Tyler's terrible jokes, and passed around a bag of gas station chips. But as the clock ticked past midnight, the mood shifted. Maybe it was the darkness pressing in, or the way the trees loomed like sentinels, but we craved something more. A spark to jolt us alive. That's when Ellie brought it up. "You guys ever hear about the old Grayson place?" she asked, turning in her seat. Her eyes glinted with mischief. The Grayson house was Cedar Hollow's urban legend, a crumbling mansion at the edge of town. Abandoned since the 1980s. People said it was haunted. Whispers of strange lights, voices, even a figure watching from the windows. Kids dared each other to get close, but no one stayed long. Tyler grinned, his hands tightening on the wheel. "Hell yeah, let's check it out." Noah raised an eyebrow, skeptical but curious. "You sure? That place is creepy as shit." I felt a thrill ripple through me, equal parts fear and excitement. "Come on, Noah," I teased, nudging him. "Scared of a few ghosts?" He rolled his eyes but smiled, and I knew he was in. Tyler turned the truck onto a narrow road, the pavement giving way to gravel that crunched under the tires. The trees grew denser, their branches clawing at the sky, blotting out the stars. My heart beat faster, the anticipation building like a storm. When the Grayson house came into view, it was worse than I'd imagined. The mansion loomed at the end of a rutted driveway, its silhouette jagged against the moonlit sky. Broken windows gaped like empty eyes, and ivy choked the sagging walls. The roof was caving in, and the porch sagged under decades of neglect. It looked alive in a twisted way, as if it was waiting for us. Tyler parked 100 yards away, cutting the engine. The silence was deafening, broken only by the distant hoot of an owl. "We doing this or what?" he asked, his bravado wavering. Ellie swallowed hard but nodded. Noah grabbed a flashlight from the glove box, his jaw tight. I zipped up my hoodie, my pulse racing. "Let's go," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. We approached on foot, the gravel biting into our sneakers. The air grew colder, heavier, as if the house was exhaling something ancient. My breath caught as we reached the front door, its paint peeled to reveal warped wood. The hinges were rusted, the door hanging ajar like an invitation. Tyler pushed it open and it groaned, a sound that echoed in my bones. We stepped inside, our flashlights cutting through the darkness, revealing a world frozen in time. The foyer was vast, its floor coated in dust that swirled with our steps. A grand staircase spiraled upward, its banister splintered. Cobwebs draped the chandelier, its crystals dull and lifeless. The air smelled of mold and something sharper, like old grief. "Holy shit," Ellie whispered, her beam landing on a faded portrait. A stern man in a suit, his eyes following us. I shivered, clutching my flashlight tighter. "Let's split up," Tyler suggested, his voice too loud. "Cover more ground." Noah shot him a look. "Hell no, we stick together." But Ellie, ever stubborn, grabbed my arm. "Mia and I'll take upstairs. You guys check down here." Before Noah could argue, we were climbing the stairs, each creak amplifying my nerves. Upstairs was worse. The hallway stretched endlessly, doors lining both sides like silent sentinels. We pushed into a bedroom, its furniture shrouded in white sheets, yellowed with age. A cracked mirror reflected our pale faces, and I avoided my own eyes, afraid of what I'd see. In another room, I found a child's toy, a wooden horse, its paint chipped, sitting alone on a dresser. My stomach twisted. "This place is wrong," I whispered. Ellie nodded, her bravado fading. "Yeah, let's—" Her words cut off as a loud crash echoed from downstairs. My heart lurched. "Tyler? Noah!" I called, my voice shaking. No answer. Ellie grabbed my hand and we bolted for the stairs, our flashlights bouncing wildly. The living room was empty, the front door now closed, though I swore we'd left it open. Panic clawed at me. "Where are they?" I hissed. We moved through the house, checking the kitchen, the dining room, every shadow a threat. My mind raced. Had they left? Were they hurt? Finally, we reached a small door at the back, half hidden behind a tattered curtain. It led to a storage room, and there they were, Tyler and Noah, frozen, staring at the floor. A trap door gaped open, its edges splintered, a black void below. "Did you open it?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. Noah shook his head, his face pale. "It was like this when we got here." A cold draft rose from the darkness carrying a faint, sour smell. My skin prickled, every instinct screaming to run. But Tyler, his eyes wide, stepped closer. "We gotta see what's down there." Ellie gripped my arm, her nails digging in. "No way, Ty, this is bad." Noah hesitated, then nodded. "We go together. Fast." Against my better judgment, I followed, my legs trembling as we descended a rickety wooden ladder. The basement was damp, the walls slick with moss. Shelves lined the space, cluttered with dusty jars and rusted tools. In the corner, a faint glow flickered, a lantern hanging from a nail, its flame impossibly alive. "What the hell?" Tyler muttered, his voice cracking. Then we heard it. Footsteps above, heavy and deliberate. My blood ran cold. Someone was in the house. Noah killed his flashlight, and we huddled in the dark, our breaths shallow. The footsteps grew louder, circling the trap door. I pressed a hand to my mouth, stifling a whimper. The trap door creaked, and a figure appeared, silhouetted against the dim light from above. A man, tall, gaunt, with wild hair and eyes that gleamed like polished glass. He moved down the ladder, slow and methodical, muttering words I couldn't catch. Terror rooted me to the spot. Ellie's hand shook in mine, Tyler's breath hitched, and Noah's arm brushed mine, grounding me just enough to keep from screaming. The man reached the basement floor, his head turning as if sensing us. He shuffled forward, his fingers trailing along the shelves, his mutters growing clearer. Nonsense about finding it, about not enough time. My heart pounded so loud I was sure he'd hear it. Then his eyes locked on mine. A smile spread across his face, slow and wrong, like a crack in ice. "Found you," he whispered, his voice a rasp that curled around my spine. Panic exploded through me. "Run!" Noah shouted, and we scrambled for the ladder, our flashlights forgotten. Tyler went first, Ellie behind him, then me. Noah was last, and as I reached the top, I heard a grunt, then a cry. I turned, my stomach dropping. The man had grabbed Noah's ankle, his nails digging into flesh. "No," I screamed, grabbing Noah's arms. Tyler and Ellie joined me, pulling with all we had. Noah kicked, his face twisted in pain, and with a final heave, we yanked him free. The man's hand fell away, and we slammed the trap door shut, shoving a heavy crate over it. The wood shuddered as something pounded from below, a guttural snarl echoing through the floor. We didn't wait. We ran. Through the storage room, the kitchen, the foyer, the front door banging open as we spilled into the night. My lungs burned, my legs wobbled, but I didn't stop until we reached the truck. Tyler fumbled the keys, cursing, and the engine roared to life. Tires screeched as we peeled out, the Grayson house shrinking in the rear-view mirror, its windows watching us go. No one spoke. The cab was thick with fear, our breaths ragged. Ellie clutched her knees, Tyler's knuckles white on the wheel. Noah's hand found mine, his fingers cold but steady, and I held on like it was the only thing keeping me sane. The moonlit fields blurred past, but the man's smile burned in my mind, those gleaming eyes carving a hole in my soul. We never went back to the Grayson house. We didn't talk about it, not really, just a few hushed words weeks later when the nightmares wouldn't stop. Tyler swore he'd heard the man's voice in his dreams calling his name. Ellie started jumping at shadows, her sarcasm replaced by silence. Noah and I grew closer, our fear forging something deeper, but even he couldn't outrun the memory. Me? I stopped chasing thrills. The unknown wasn't exciting anymore, it was a threat. Cedar Hollow moved on, but the Grayson place stayed empty, its legend growing darker. Sometimes driving past the turnoff, I'd feel it, a pull like the house was whispering my name. I'd grip the wheel and speed up, my heart racing. Late at night, when sleep wouldn't come, I'd see him, the man, his smile, his eyes, and I'd wonder, was he still there waiting? Or had he followed us out, a shadow we'd never shake? Last week I found a photo in my jacket pocket, one I didn't take. It was grainy dark, but I recognized the basement, the lantern's glow. In the corner, barely visible, was a shape, tall, gaunt, smiling. I burned the photo, but it didn't help. Because deep down I know the truth. We didn't escape the Grayson house. Not really. And whatever we woke that night is still out there, watching, waiting for us to come back. My name is Lily Carter, and at 29 I thought I had life figured out, at least enough to get by. I'd been working the night shift at a 24-hour gas station in Pine Ridge, New Hampshire for 2 years, and while it wasn't glamorous, it paid the bills. Pine Ridge is one of those small towns where nothing much happens, where the biggest drama is a deer crossing the highway or a kid spray painting the water tower. I liked the quiet, the way the world slowed down after midnight, leaving me alone with my thoughts and the hum of the fluorescent lights. But one night a year ago, something broke through that quiet, and it's been haunting me ever since. A warning I can't shake, a shadow that lingers in every dark corner. It was a frigid February night in 2024, the kind where your breath hangs in the air and the cold seeps into your bones. The gas station, a squat neon-lit outpost off Route 16, was dead quiet. Not a single customer since my shift started at 10 p.m. I was behind the counter, restocking cigarette packs and sipping lukewarm coffee, the radio crackling with a classic rock station that barely came through. My life felt stuck back then. I dropped out of college, moved back to Pine Ridge, and was scraping by, dreaming of something bigger but too tired to chase it. The night shift was my escape, a place where I could be alone, lost in my own head. Around 11:45 p.m., I noticed the air shift. It's hard to explain. A stillness like the world was holding its breath. The radio hissed, then went silent, and a chill ran through me despite the heater rattling in the corner. I shook it off, blaming the coffee jitters, and went back to wiping down the counter. That's when I heard the crunch of tires on gravel. Headlights swept across the windows, and an old sedan, a rusty Buick maybe, pulled up to pump 3. The driver's door creaked open, and out stepped an elderly man, his movements slow but deliberate, like he had all the time in the world. He was tall, thin as a rail, with a shock of white hair combed neatly back. His outfit was oddly formal: pressed khakis, a button-down shirt, a tweed jacket that looked like it belonged in a different era. As he walked into the store, the bell above the door jingled sharp and jarring in the silence. I plastered on my customer service smile. "Evening, sir. How can I help you?" He nodded, his pale blue eyes locking onto mine. There was something about his gaze, piercing, like he could see straight through to my soul. "Just browsing," he said, his voice low and gravelly with a faint accent I couldn't place. He wandered the aisles, his steps measured, picking up a candy bar, then putting it back, studying a shelf of motor oil like it held the secrets of the universe. I watched him, uneasy for reasons I couldn't name. Maybe it was the way he moved, too precise, or the way his shadow seemed to flicker under the lights. After a few minutes, he approached the counter with a bottle of water and a pack of spearmint gum. "That all?" I asked, scanning the items. He nodded, his eyes never leaving mine. My skin prickled and I fumbled the change, a quarter rolling across the counter. As I handed it back, his hand closed around my wrist, cold, impossibly cold, like he'd been standing in a freezer. I froze, my breath catching. "Hell is real, girl," he said, his voice a hiss that seemed to echo inside my skull. "And the devil's got his claws in you. Watch your step." His grip tightened, just enough to hurt, and his eyes burned with an intensity that made my heart stutter. I yanked my hand free, stumbling back, my stool clattering against the wall. "What the hell?" I gasped, but he didn't flinch. He took his water and gum, turned and walked out, the bell jingling softly as the door swung shut. I stood there, my chest heaving, his words looping in my mind. The Buick's taillights faded into the night and the station was silent again, but it felt different, tainted. My wrist throbbed where he'd grabbed it, and when I looked, there were faint red marks like fingerprints. I rubbed them, telling myself it was nothing, just a creepy old man with too much time on his hands, but deep down I knew better. Something about him wasn't right. Something about him wasn't human. I finished my shift on autopilot, jumping at every sound. The hum of the cooler, the creak of the floor, the wind rattling the windows. When I locked up at 6 a.m., the dawn was gray and heavy, the air thick with frost. Driving home in my ancient Civic, I kept glancing in the rearview mirror, half expecting to see that Buick trailing me. My apartment, a cramped one-bedroom above a laundromat, was usually a comfort, but that morning it felt exposed, like the walls were too thin to keep anything out. I double-checked the locks, drew the curtains, and collapsed on the couch, too wired to sleep. His words haunted me. "Hell is real. The devil's got his claws in you." What did that mean? Was it a threat? A warning? I tried to laugh it off. Pine Ridge wasn't exactly a hotbed of demonic activity, but the fear stuck, burrowing deep. That night I dreamed of him, his pale eyes glowing in the dark, his voice whispering my name. I woke gasping, my sheets tangled, the clock blinking 3:33 a.m. The apartment was silent, but I swore I heard a faint tap at the window, like a finger testing the glass. I didn't look. I couldn't. The next day I told my coworker Jake, a 31-year-old slacker who'd been at the station longer than me. He leaned against the counter, chewing a Slim Jim, and snorted. "Sounds like a nutcase, Lil, probably off his meds." I forced a laugh, but it felt hollow. Jake didn't get it. He hadn't felt that grip, hadn't seen those eyes. I started dreading my shifts, my stomach knotting as the sun set. The station, once my sanctuary, now felt like a trap, its bright lights a beacon for whatever was out there. A week later, it got worse. I was restocking the chip aisle, the radio playing some old Springsteen tune, when I heard a whisper, soft, like a breath against my ear. "Lily!" I spun around, my heart in my throat, but the store was empty. The lights flickered, casting long shadows that seemed to twist and sway. I gripped the shelf, my nails digging into the metal, and called out, "Jake? You here?" Silence. Then another whisper, louder, a jumble of words I couldn't make out, coming from everywhere and nowhere. I bolted to the counter, my hands shaking as I checked the security monitor. Nothing, just the pumps, the parking lot, the road stretching into darkness. But the whispers didn't stop. They grew insistent, a chorus of murmurs that clawed at my sanity. I turned up the radio, blasting it to drown them out, but it was like trying to block out a storm with a paper towel. By the end of my shift, I was a wreck, my eyes darting to every corner, my skin crawling. The next night, it escalated. I was mopping the floor, the station quiet except for the buzz of the lights, when I felt it, a presence, heavy and cold, like someone standing right behind me. I turned, expecting nothing, but my breath caught. The air shimmered, and for a split second I saw him. The old man standing by the coffee machine, his eyes locked on mine. He was gone when I blinked, but my heart pounded so hard I thought it had burst. I grabbed my phone, dialing Jake, but it went to voicemail. The clock read 11:58 p.m., 2 minutes to midnight. Then the bell jingled. I froze, my mop clattering to the floor. The door swung open, and there he was, real this time, his tweed jacket dusted with snow. His face was gaunt, his eyes brighter than before, like twin moons in a dead sky. "Hell is real, girl," he said, his voice cutting through the air like a blade. "And the devil's waiting. You can't run forever." He stepped closer, his boots silent on the tile, and I backed into the counter, my hands scrabbling for anything, a pen, a stapler, something to fight with. "Stay away," I shouted, my voice cracking. He smiled, thin and sharp, and reached for me, his fingers brushing my arm. They were ice, burning cold, and I screamed, shoving past him. I ran for the door, the bell shrieking as I burst outside. The cold hit me like a slap, but I didn't stop, sprinting to my car, fumbling with the keys. I locked myself in, my breath fogging the windows, and watched the station. He stood inside, motionless, staring out at me. Then the lights flickered, and he was gone. I drove home, tears streaming down my face, his words echoing. "You can't run forever." My apartment felt like a cage, every noise a threat. The radiator's clank, the neighbor's TV, the wind howling outside. I called in sick the next day, then the next, too scared to go back. I told my boss I needed a break, and he grumbled but let me off. Jake texted asking if I was okay, but I didn't answer. How could I explain? How could I say I was running from a ghost, a demon, a man who wasn't a man? Weeks passed, and I tried to rebuild. I got a job at a diner, daytime shifts, surrounded by people and sunlight. I told myself it was over, that he was just a drifter, a figment of my exhausted mind. But the fear lingered, a splinter I couldn't pull out. I'd wake at 3:33 a.m., my heart racing, convinced I'd heard his voice. I'd check the locks, the windows, my phone glowing in the dark. Nothing. Always nothing. Then one night I found it. A note slipped under my door, written in spidery script. "Watch your step, Lily," it read, and below, in smaller letters, "He's closer than you think." My blood ran cold. I tore it up, burned the pieces, but it didn't matter. I felt him, his eyes, his voice, his cold touch everywhere. I moved to a new apartment, changed my number, but the shadows followed. At the diner, I'd catch a glimpse of white hair in the crowd, a flicker of tweed at the edge of my vision. Gone when I looked, but never really gone. Pine Ridge is still my home, but it's not the same. I don't walk alone at night, don't trust the quiet. I keep a knife by my bed, a cross on the wall, though I'm not sure I believe in any of it. Jake says I'm paranoid, that I need to let it go, but he didn't feel that grip, didn't hear that voice. I don't know who he was. An old man, a spirit, something worse. But I know he meant his warning, and I know he's still out there watching, waiting for me to slip. Last week I saw the Buick again, parked across from the diner, its engine idling. No one was inside, but the windows were fogged, and when I stepped closer I swore I saw a handprint fading into the glass. I ran inside, my heart pounding, and didn't look back. Because deep down I know the truth. Hell might be real, and whatever has its claws in me isn't letting go. My name is Daniel Brooks, and at 38 I thought I knew what it meant to feel safe. I've spent my life building a home for my family in the bustling chaos of Columbus, Ohio, where the city hum keeps you grounded and the suburbs offer just enough quiet to breathe. My wife, Sarah, 36, is my rock with a laugh that can chase away any storm. Our kids, Mia, 10, and Owen, 7, are the heart of everything, their energy a constant reminder of why we keep going. Last summer I wanted to give them a break from the concrete jungle, a chance to run wild under open skies. So I booked a weekend at a farmhouse in rural Hocking Hills, a picture-perfect escape I found on Airbnb. I thought it'd be our little adventure. Instead, it became a nightmare that still wakes me in a cold sweat, a reminder that safety is a fragile illusion. It was a warm July weekend in 2024, the kind where the sun lingers like an old friend, and the air smells of honeysuckle and fresh-cut grass. I'd been planning the trip for weeks, scrolling through photos of the farmhouse, a sprawling, century-old beauty with a wraparound porch, a big yard, and a sparkling pool tucked among rolling hills. The reviews glowed, peaceful, charming, a slice of paradise. I showed Sarah the listing and her eyes lit up. "The kids'll love it," she said, squeezing my hand. Mia was already begging to swim, and Owen wanted to hunt for fireflies. I booked it, my chest swelling with anticipation. This was going to be our reset, a memory to carry us through the grind of fall. We piled into our minivan on Friday afternoon, the kids chattering in the back, Sarah humming along to a country playlist. The drive was 3 hours, the city fading into fields of corn and wildflowers, the road narrowing as we wound deeper into Hocking Hills. By the time we reached the farmhouse, the sun was dipping low, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold. The house was even better than the photos. White clapboard siding, green shutters, a porch swing creaking in the breeze. A gravel driveway stretched into the distance, flanked by ancient oaks that whispered secrets in the wind. "Wow, Dad!" Mia gasped, pressing her face to the window. Owen bounced in his seat. "Can we swim now?" Sarah laughed, ruffling his hair. "Let's unpack first, champ." We hauled our bags inside, the kids racing through the house, their sneakers thumping on hardwood floors. The interior was a time capsule. Antique furniture, floral wallpaper, old photos of stern-faced farmers staring from the walls. It smelled of polished wood and lavender, cozy and lived in. I felt a pang of pride. This was my doing, my gift to them. After settling in, we headed to the pool, a turquoise oasis surrounded by a low wooden fence. The kids cannonballed in, their squeals echoing as Sarah and I sat on the edge, our feet dangling in the cool water. That evening we set up fairy lights around the pool, their soft glow dancing on the surface. Sarah grilled burgers and we ate on a picnic table, the kids smearing ketchup on their faces, Sarah stealing a bite of my fries. The stars came out, brighter than I'd ever seen, and for a moment everything was perfect. I leaned back, my arm around Sarah, thinking maybe this was what happiness felt like. Simple, whole, ours. Then I heard it, a faint crunch like boots on dry leaves coming from the darkness beyond the lights. My stomach tightened. I scanned the yard, but the shadows were thick, the trees swallowing any hint of movement. Sarah noticed my tension, her hand brushing mine. "What's wrong?" she whispered. "You hear that?" I asked, keeping my voice low. Another crunch, closer now. Her eyes widened, but she forced a smile. "Probably a deer, Dan. We're in the country." I nodded, wanting to believe her, but the hairs on my neck stood up. I told the kids to get out of the pool, my tone sharper than I meant. Mia pouted, but Owen obeyed, his eyes darting to the trees. We gathered our things, the fairy lights casting long, eerie shadows as we hurried inside. I locked the door, the click loud in the sudden quiet, and checked every window, my pulse thudding. Inside, the house felt different, too big, too silent. Sarah tucked the kids into bed, reading them a story to ease their nerves while I paced the living room, my phone in hand. The noises continued, soft, rhythmic, like someone circling the house. I peeked through the curtains, but the yard was empty, the pool a dark mirror under the moon. "It's nothing," I told myself, but the lie tasted bitter. Sarah joined me, her face pale. "They're asleep," she said, her voice trembling. "Dan, what's out there?" I didn't know, and that scared me more than anything. I grabbed a flashlight, its beam shaky in my grip, and we sat on the couch, the house creaking around us. Hours passed, the noises fading, and I started to relax, chalking it up to nerves. Maybe Sarah was right. Just animals, just the wind. Then at 2:37 a.m., a knock rattled the front door, sharp and deliberate. My heart stopped. Sarah gasped, clutching my arm. "Who's that?" she whispered. I crept to the door, my flashlight off, and peered through the peephole. A man stood on the porch, dressed in a police uniform, dark blue, badge glinting, a wide-brimmed hat shadowing his face. "Open up," he called, his voice deep, authoritative. "It's the police." My gut twisted. Why would a cop be here in the middle of nowhere at this hour? I hesitated, my hand hovering over the lock. "What do you want?" I shouted, my voice steadier than I felt. "Got a report of suspicious activity," he replied, his tone calm but edged with impatience. "Need to check the property. Open the door." Something was off. His voice, his stance, the way he stood too still like a predator waiting to pounce. Sarah's eyes were wide, her breath shallow. "Don't," she mouthed, shaking her head. I backed away, pulling out my phone. "I'm calling the station," I said loudly, hoping he'd hear. My fingers trembled as I dialed the Hocking Hills Sheriff's Office, the line ringing endlessly. The man knocked again, harder, the door shaking in its frame. "Open up now," he barked, his voice losing its calm, a growl creeping in. Sarah grabbed a kitchen knife, her hands shaking, and I motioned for her to stay back. Finally, a dispatcher answered, her voice clipped. "Sheriff's office, what's your emergency?" I explained quickly, the farmhouse, the man, the uniform. There was a pause, then her tone sharpened. "Sir, we haven't sent anyone to that address. Stay inside, lock everything. We're sending deputies now." My blood ran cold. Not a cop. I hung up, my mouth dry, and whispered to Sarah, "He's not real. Get the kids." She nodded, slipping upstairs while I turned off the living room lights, plunging the house into darkness. Through the curtains I saw him, still on the porch, his head tilted, listening. Then I saw others, shadows moving in the yard, 3, maybe 4, their shapes indistinct but purposeful. My heart pounded as I backed away, the knife Sarah left glinting on the counter. The fake cop pounded the door again, the wood groaning, and I heard a window rattle somewhere in the house, like someone was testing it. Sarah returned, Mia and Owen clinging to her, their eyes wide with fear. "Basement," I whispered, leading them to a door off the kitchen. We slipped inside, locking it behind us, the air damp and musty. The kids huddled against Sarah, Owen's sniffles muffled against her shirt. "Daddy, who's out there?" Mia asked, her voice small. I forced a smile, my throat tight. "Just some jerks, sweetie. We're safe here." But I didn't feel safe. The basement was a concrete box, canned goods, old furniture, a single bulb flickering overhead. Every sound echoed, the creak of the floor above, the faint thud of footsteps. I gripped my phone, checking the time. The dispatcher had said 10 minutes, but it felt like hours. Sarah held the kids, her lips moving in a silent prayer, something we hadn't done since we were kids ourselves. I wanted to comfort them, to promise it'd be okay, but fear choked me, raw and relentless. The pounding stopped, replaced by an eerie silence. I strained to listen, my pulse roaring in my ears. Then a new sound, a slow, deliberate scratching, like nails dragging across wood, coming from the basement door. Sarah's eyes met mine, terror mirrored in her gaze. Owen whimpered, and I pulled him close, my arm around Mia too. "Shh," I whispered, my voice barely audible. The scratching grew louder, rhythmic, taunting, and I pictured those shadows, their hands clawing, searching for a way in. Minutes dragged, each one a lifetime. My phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. "Sheriff ETA, 2 minutes. I clung to it, hope flickering. Then through the basement's small window I saw lights, red and blue, flashing in the dark. Sirens wailed, faint but growing louder. The scratching stopped, and I heard hurried footsteps above, then nothing. I waited, my breath held, until a new knock came. Not the front door, but the basement one. "Sheriff's Department," a voice called, firm but human. "Mr. Brooks, you there?" I hesitated, fear still gripping me, but Sarah nodded. "It's okay," she whispered. I unlocked the door, and 2 deputies stood there, flashlights in hand, their faces serious but kind. "You're safe now," one said, a woman with a no-nonsense braid. They searched the house, the yard, the woods beyond, but found no one. No fake cop, no shadows, just tire tracks in the gravel leading nowhere. The deputies stayed until dawn, taking our statements, their radios crackling with updates. "Happens sometimes," the second deputy, a grizzled man named Harris, told us. "People pose as cops, try to scam folks, or worse." "You did right not opening the door?" "Worse." The word hung heavy, unspoken possibilities, chilling my blood. They suggested we leave, and we didn't argue. We packed in a daze, the kids silent, Sarah's hands shaking as she zipped bags. The farmhouse, once a dream, now felt like a cage, its walls watching us go. We drove to a motel in Logan, the kids falling asleep in the back, Sarah staring out the window. "What did they want?" she asked finally, her voice barely audible. I shook my head, my throat tight. "I don't know. But I did know. Money maybe, or something darker, something I couldn't face." At the motel we curled up together, the kids between us, their warmth anchoring me. But sleep didn't come. I kept seeing him, The fake cop, his shadowed face, his fist on the door. Hocking Hills faded behind us, but the fear didn't. Back in Columbus, we tried to rebuild. School, work, soccer practice. But the farmhouse clung to us. Mia started drawing dark figures in her sketchbook. Owen woke screaming from nightmares. Sarah and I checked the locks obsessively, installed cameras, jumped at every late-night noise. I stopped trusting strangers. My faith in the world cracked. What if we'd opened the door? What if they'd gotten in? The questions gnawed at me, endless and unanswered. One night, months later, I found a note tucked in my toolbox, a scrap of paper, no signature. "You were smart," it read, in tight, unfamiliar script. "Not everyone is." My hands shook as I showed Sarah, her face paling. We burned it, but the words stayed. A warning or a taunt, I couldn't tell. I called the sheriff's office, but they had no leads, the case as cold as the night it happened. Columbus is still home, but it's different now. I drive Mia to school, kiss Owen goodnight, hold Sarah a little tighter. The farmhouse is a memory we don't speak of, but it's there. In Mia's drawings, Owen's fears, the way Sarah checks the windows. I'm more cautious, always verifying, always watching, because I know now. Safety is a lie we tell ourselves, and some doors once knocked never stop echoing. My name is Rachel Evans, and at 32 I thought I'd mastered the art of keeping it together. Living alone in a small apartment in Burlington, Vermont, I'd carved out a quiet life, working as a graphic designer, sipping coffee at indie cafes, and finding comfort in routine. Burlington's charm, with its cobblestone streets and lakefront views, made me feel grounded, like I belonged somewhere. But in the summer of 2023, one night shattered that illusion, turning my safe little world into a maze of fear and questions I'm still too scared to answer. It started with a bed that shouldn't have been there, and it's haunted me ever since. It was a muggy Saturday in August, the kind where the air clings to your skin and even the breeze feels tired. I'd had a brutal week. Endless client revisions, looming deadlines, and a tension headache that wouldn't quit. By 8 p.m., I was done. My apartment, a cozy one-bedroom on the third floor of an old brick building, was my sanctuary. White walls, thrifted furniture, a bookshelf stuffed with dog-eared novels. I craved sleep, the kind that resets you, so I skipped dinner, changed into an oversized t-shirt, and crawled into bed. My queen-sized mattress with its navy comforter and too many pillows felt like a hug. I closed my eyes, the hum of the refrigerator lulling me, and drifted into a deep, dream-soaked slumber. My dreams were vivid, chaotic, flashes of shadowed hallways, a voice calling my name, a cold hand brushing my cheek. I tried to wake, to pull myself free, but it was like swimming through molasses, my body heavy, my mind trapped. When I finally broke through, my eyes snapped open and I lay there, heart pounding, sweat beading on my forehead. The room was dark. The only light a sliver of moonlight slipping through the blinds. I reached for my phone on the nightstand, its glow harsh against the shadows. The time read 3:33 a.m., a number that sent a shiver down my spine, though I couldn't say why. I sat up, rubbing my eyes, trying to shake the dream's grip. That's when I noticed it. Something wrong. Something impossible. There was another bed in my room, right next to mine, pressed so close our headboards almost touched. My breath caught. My apartment was small, barely enough space for my own furniture, let alone this intruder. The bed was identical to mine, same dark wooden frame, same white sheets, same navy comforter. But it looked older, worn, the sheets frayed at the edges, stained with faint, rusty spots. I blinked hard, willing it to vanish, but it stayed, solid and real. My heart hammered as I scanned the room, every shadow a threat. Then I saw it, the shape beneath the sheets, a figure lying still, the comforter pulled over its head, hiding its face. My stomach lurched. No one had keys to my place. I lived alone, always had. I tried to scream, but my throat closed, the sound dying as a whimper. The air felt thick, charged, like a storm about to break. "Who's there?" I whispered, my voice barely audible. No answer. The figure didn't move, its stillness unnatural, like a statue carved from silence. I slid out of bed, my bare feet cold against the hardwood, my hands trembling as I backed toward the door. My mind raced. Call the police, grab a weapon, run, but fear rooted me. My eyes locked on the bed. The sheets were thin, almost translucent, and I could make out the shape beneath. Tall, thin, too still to be alive, yet too present to be a dream. I fumbled for the light switch, my fingers missing twice before I flicked it on. The room blazed with harsh fluorescence, but the figure didn't stir. The bed was still there, its stains darker now, like old blood. I took a step closer, my breath shallow, drawn by a sick need to know. Was it a prank? A break-in? My neighbor Kyle had a key for emergencies, but this wasn't his style. I reached for my phone, ready to dial 911, but my hand froze as the figure moved. It was subtle at first, a twitch, a ripple under the sheets. Then it sat up, slow and deliberate, the comforter still draped over its head like a shroud. My heart stopped. It turned toward me, and though I couldn't see its face, I felt its gaze heavy and unyielding, boring into my soul. I stumbled back, my hips slamming into the dresser, pain shooting through me. "Who are you?" I choked out, louder this time, my voice cracking. No answer. The figure stood, the sheets clinging to its frame, outlining limbs too long, too angular. It was tall, taller than anyone I knew, and its movements were wrong, like a puppet on frayed strings. It took a step toward me, silent, the floorboards not even creaking under its weight. Panic surged, raw and electric, snapping me out of my daze. I bolted for the door, my hands scrabbling at the lock, the metal cold and slippery. Behind me I heard it, footsteps soft but relentless, closing the gap. I yanked the door open and ran, the hallway a blur of dim lights and peeling paint. My bare feet slapped the tiles as I tore down the stairs, not daring to look back. The night air hit me as I burst outside, sharp and humid, the street empty except for a stray cat darting across the road. I leaned against the building, gasping, my phone clutched in my hand. The world spun, my mind screaming, who was that? How did they get in? I called 911, my voice shaking as I explained, a stranger in my apartment, a bed that wasn't mine, a figure under the sheets. The dispatcher was calm, almost skeptical, but promised officers were on the way. I paced the sidewalk, my t-shirt sticking to my skin, my eyes locked on the building's entrance. Every shadow seemed to move, every sound a threat. When the police arrived, 2 officers, a man and a woman, their flashlights cutting through the dark, I was a mess, tears streaking my face, my words tumbling over each other. "Stay here," the woman, Officer Hayes said, her voice firm but kind. They went upstairs, radios crackling while I waited, hugging myself against the chill. Minutes stretched into eternity, my mind replaying the figure's slow rise, its unseen eyes. When the officers returned, their faces were unreadable. "There's no one up there," Hayes said, her brow furrowed. "No bed either, just yours. You sure you saw it?" I stared, my mouth dry. "I know what I saw," I insisted, but doubt crept in, cold and insidious. Had I dreamed it? Was I losing it? They searched again, humoring me, but found nothing. No signs of a break-in, no extra bed, no footprints on the dusty floor. "Maybe stress," the man Officer Torres suggested, not unkindly. "Happens sometimes." I nodded, numb, and watched them drive away, their taillights swallowed by the night. I couldn't go back inside, not yet. I sat on the curb, the asphalt rough under my thighs, until dawn painted the sky gray. When I finally forced myself upstairs, the apartment was exactly as it should be. My bed, my dresser, my life undisturbed. The space beside my mattress was empty, the floorboards bare. I checked every inch. Closets, windows, under the bed, nothing. The locks were secure, the chain untouched. But the air felt wrong, heavy like someone had just left. I didn't sleep that day, or the next. I worked from home, my laptop a lifeline to normalcy, but my focus was shot. Every creak made me jump, every shadow held a face I couldn't see. I called Kyle, asking if he'd let anyone in. He hadn't, and his concern only made me feel crazier. I scoured the internet for answers. Sleep paralysis, hallucinations, hauntings, but nothing fit. The figure wasn't a dream. It was real as the fear choking me. A week later, it got worse. I was showering, the steam thick, when I heard a whisper, my name soft and deliberate from the other side of the curtain. I froze, water pounding my skin, my heart racing. I ripped the curtain open, expecting nothing. But the bathroom mirror was fogged, and scrawled in the condensation was a single word: "Rachel." I screamed, slipping on the tile, and ran out, dripping and shaking. The apartment was empty, the door locked, but I knew I wasn't alone. I moved out a month later to a studio across town, hoping distance would help. I told myself it was over, that I'd left whatever it was behind. But the new place didn't feel safe either. I'd wake at 3:33 a.m., my pulse pounding, convinced I'd heard a creak, a step, a breath. I'd check my phone, the locks, the windows, finding nothing but my own reflection, pale and hollow-eyed. Friends noticed. My co-worker, Jess, a bubbly 28-year-old, kept asking if I was okay. I lied, saying I was stressed, but she didn't buy it. How could I tell her I was running from a ghost? One night, I found a photo on my kitchen counter. A Polaroid, faded and creased, showing my old bedroom. My bed was there, and next to it, the other one, its sheets rumpled, a shadow beneath. I hadn't taken it, hadn't owned a Polaroid in years. My hands shook as I burned it in the sink, the flames licking the image away, but the smell lingered, acrid and wrong. I called a priest, a therapist, even a psychic. None helped. The priest blessed the apartment, the therapist prescribed pills, the psychic muttered about open doors. I stopped believing in answers, only in fear. Burlington is still my home, but it's a stranger now. I work, I smile, I pretend, but the truth is I'm waiting for the next whisper, the next shadow, the next bed. I keep a light on at night, a knife by my side, though I know it's useless. Whatever was in my room that night wasn't human, wasn't bound by locks or logic. It knew my name, my fear, and it's still out there, patient, relentless. Last week I woke to a sound, a faint creak like a bed frame settling. My heart stopped as I turned on the lamp, its glow spilling across the room. My bed was alone, the floor empty, but in the mirror for a split second I saw it. The other bed, the figure rising, its sheets falling away. I blinked, and it was gone, but my scream echoed raw and endless. Because I know now it's not over, it's never over. And wherever I go, it's waiting just beyond the light. My name is Tyler Hayes, and at 27 I thought I'd seen the worst of what people could do. Working the graveyard shift at a gas station in Ashwood, Tennessee, I dealt with drunks, thieves, and the occasional creep who thought a late-night snack run was a chance to get too close. Ashwood's a small town, the kind where Main Street shuts down by 9 and the biggest excitement is Friday night football. The gas station, bright, lonely, perched on the edge of Highway 41, was my world from midnight to dawn, a place where I could pay my rent and keep my head down. But one night, a year ago, that world turned upside down. And I learned that sometimes standing up to darkness means facing your own fears head on. It was a humid June night in 2024, the air thick with the buzz of crickets and the faint tang of gasoline. The station was quiet, its fluorescent lights humming over rows of chips and sodas, the coffee machine gurgling like an old friend. I was halfway through my shift, restocking the cooler, my sneakers squeaking on the tile. My life wasn't much to brag about. Dropped out of community college, bouncing between odd jobs, still figuring out what I wanted. The night shift suited me, though. It was just me, the radio playing soft country tunes and the occasional trucker needing a fill-up. I liked the solitude, the way it let me think without the world pressing in. Around 2 a.m. I was wiping down the counter, humming along to Willie Nelson when the bell above the door jingled. I glanced up, expecting another bleary-eyed driver, but my breath caught. A woman stepped inside, clutching the hand of a small boy, both of them looking like they'd seen a ghost. She was in her early 30s, I guessed, petite, with tangled brown hair and a face streaked with tears. Her dress was torn at the shoulder, a bruise blooming on her cheek, and her eyes darted around like a cornered animal's. The boy, maybe 6 or 7, clung to her side, his blonde hair matted, his pajamas dirty. He stared at the floor, his little body trembling. "Hey," I said softly, setting down the rag. "You okay?" It was a stupid question. She clearly wasn't, but I didn't know what else to say. She flinched at my voice, pulling the boy closer, then seemed to steady herself. Can I use your phone?" she asked, her voice shaky, barely above a whisper. I nodded, sliding the corded phone across the counter. "Take your time." Her hands shook as she dialed, the boy pressing against her leg, his eyes wide but silent. I busied myself straightening a display, trying not to eavesdrop, but her words came in fragments. Urgent, desperate. "Please, you have to help. He's coming. We got away, but—" She hung up, her shoulders sagging, and looked at me, her gaze raw with fear. "Can we stay here? Just for a bit?" "Of course," I said, my chest tightening. I didn't know her story, but I knew that look. Someone running from hell. "You're safe here." I grabbed a couple of bottled waters and a pack of cookies from the shelf. On the house, I added, setting them down. Her lips trembled, a flicker of gratitude breaking through her panic. "Thank you," she whispered, handing a cookie to the boy. He took it but didn't eat, just held it, staring at nothing. They settled in a corner by the magazine rack, the woman. Her name was Emily, I'd learn later. Sitting cross-legged, the boy curled in her lap. I kept an eye on them, my usual tasks feeling pointless. Who was she running from? An ex? A stranger? My mind spun, but I didn't ask. She needed space, not questions. I turned up the radio a little, hoping it'd calm them, but the station was crackling, the signal weak. The air felt heavy, like a storm was brewing, though the sky outside was clear. An hour ticked by, slow and tense. Emily sipped her water, whispering to the boy, Sam, she called him, stroking his hair. He was quiet, too quiet for a kid, and it broke my heart. I thought about my own childhood, rough but safe, my mom always there with a hug. What had these two been through? I was about to offer them a blanket from the break room when the bell rang again, sharp and aggressive, shattering the stillness. A man stormed in, tall, broad, maybe 40, with a face twisted in rage. His denim jacket was stained, his boots scuffed, and his eyes locked on Emily like a hunter spotting prey. "There you are," he growled, striding toward her. Emily shrank back, pulling Sam behind her, her face pale as death. "No," she whimpered, her voice breaking. Sam started to cry, a soft, terrified sound that cut through me like a knife. Instinct kicked in. I stepped between them, my heart pounding but my voice steady. "Hey, buddy, you need to back off." He stopped, his glare shifting to me, sizing me up. I'm no hero, 5'10", skinny, more used to breaking up bar fights than playing knight. But I wasn't letting him near her. "Get out of my way," he snarled, his fists clenching. "She's coming with me." "No, she's not," I shot back, my hands balling at my sides. Emily was sobbing now, clutching Sam, and I could feel her fear like a physical thing, thick and suffocating. The man took a step closer, his breath hot with whiskey, and I braced myself. "I'm calling the cops," I said, loud enough for Emily to hear, hoping it'd buy time. I reached for the phone, but he lunged, knocking it from my hand. The receiver clattered across the floor, the dial tone buzzing like a dying insect. "Big mistake," he hissed, grabbing my shirt, his fingers digging into my chest. I shoved back, adrenaline surging, but he was stronger, his weight pinning me against the counter. Emily screamed, "Stop!" and Sam's cries grew louder, piercing the chaos. I swung wildly, my fist grazing his jaw, and he staggered just enough for me to break free. I dove for the phone, my hands shaking as I dialed 911. "Help!" I shouted when the dispatcher answered. "Gas station on Highway 41, guys attacking us." The man roared, lunging again, but I ducked, scrambling to keep the counter between us. "They're coming!" I yelled, hoping Emily heard, hoping it was true. He turned on her, his arm raised, and I threw myself at him, tackling him into a display of beef jerky. Cans and bags scattered, the noise deafening, and we hit the floor, grappling like animals. He was heavy, his elbows sharp, but I held on, my only thought keeping him away from them. Time blurred. Seconds, minutes, I couldn't tell. Emily's screams, Sam's sobs. The man's curses filled the air, a cacophony of fear and fury. My arms burned, my knuckles bled, but I didn't let go, not until I heard sirens, faint at first, then loud, screaming through the night. Red and blue lights flashed through the windows and the door burst open, 2 cops charging in, guns drawn. "Hands up," one barked, a burly guy with a buzz cut. The man froze, his grip loosening, and I rolled away, gasping, my chest heaving. "Step away," the second cop, a woman with sharp eyes, ordered. He raised his hands, his face contorted with rage, and they cuffed him, dragging him outside. Emily collapsed into a chair, Sam buried in her arms, both of them shaking. I sat on the floor, my back against the counter, blood trickling from a cut on my lip, my body screaming. The station was a wreck, spilled snacks, a cracked shelf, the phone dangling off its cord. But we were alive. The female cop, Officer Reed, stayed behind, kneeling beside Emily. "You're safe now," she said, her voice gentle but firm. Emily nodded, tears streaming, and started talking, her words halting but clear. The man, Greg, her boyfriend, had been abusive for years, controlling, violent. That night he'd gone too far, hitting her in front of Sam, and she'd grabbed him and run, driving until the car sputtered out near the station. "I didn't know where else to go," she whispered, clutching Sam tighter. Reed took notes, her face unreadable, and promised they'd get help, a shelter, a social worker, whatever they needed. I listened, my heart aching, thinking how close they'd come to not making it. Sam looked at me, his eyes red but steady, and mouthed, "Thank you." I nodded, my throat tight, unable to speak. The cops took Greg away, his curses fading as the squad car peeled out. A social worker arrived an hour later, a kind-eyed woman named Clara who wrapped Emily and Sam in blankets and drove them to a safe house. Before they left, Emily turned to me, her face raw with gratitude. "You saved us," she said, her voice breaking. I shook my head, embarrassed. "Just did what anyone would." But as the door closed behind them, I wasn't so sure. Not everyone would have stepped in, not everyone would have fought. I cleaned up the station, my hands still shaking, the radio silent now, its plug yanked in the chaos. The lights buzzed overhead, too bright, exposing every crack in my courage. I'd been scared, terrified really, but I'd acted, and that meant something. Dawn broke, pale and gray, as my shift ended. I locked up, the air cool against my bruised skin, and drove home to my tiny duplex, the world feeling both bigger and smaller. I thought about Emily and Sam, hoping they'd find peace, hoping they'd heal. My boss gave me a few days off, called me a hero, but I didn't feel like one. Just a guy who'd done what he could. Ashwood didn't change much after that. The station's still there, same neon sign, same creaky cooler. I kept working nights, but it wasn't the same. Every jingle of the bell made my pulse spike. Every shadow held Greg's face. I started boxing at a local gym, channeling the fear into something I could control, and saved up to go back to school, maybe study social work. Emily and Sam stayed with me, not as a burden, but as a spark. Proof that one moment, one choice could matter. Last month I got a letter, no return address, just my name in neat handwriting. Inside was a drawing, a kid's sketch of a gas station under a starry sky. 2 stick figures holding hands and a third, taller, standing guard. "Thank you, Tyler," it read, signed Sam. I framed it, hung it by my desk, a reminder of the night I faced darkness and found something stronger. Because in that station, under those harsh lights, I didn't just save them, I saved a piece of myself too. My name is Ethan Parker, and at 24 I thought I was invincible. Growing up in the sleepy town of Millwood, Indiana, I'd always been drawn to the edges of things. Places forgotten, stories untold, secrets buried in dust. There was a thrill in exploring the abandoned, a rush that made my heart race and my fears feel small. Millwood was the perfect playground for it. Old barns, crumbling factories, and whispers of hauntings that every kid swore were true. But one night, a year ago, I ventured too far into a place that wasn't just empty. It was alive, and it didn't want us there. The memory of that night still claws at me, a shadow I can't outrun. It was a crisp October evening in 2024. The kind where the air bites your cheeks and the leaves crunch like brittle bones underfoot. I was restless, cooped up in my cramped apartment above the hardware store, the walls closing in. My friends, Lila, a 22-year-old barista with a wicked sense of humor. Connor, a 25-year-old welder who'd been my best friend since middle school. And Harper, a 23-year-old photographer with a knack for finding beauty in decay, were sprawled on my couch, passing around a six-pack and complaining about the monotony of Millwood. We needed something to shake us awake, something to make us feel alive. "Let's explore," I said, leaning forward, my beer bottle sweating in my hand. Lila's eyes lit up, her braids swinging as she nodded. "Hell yeah. Where to?" Connor, always the skeptic, raised an eyebrow. "Not another damn cornfield, Ethan. I'm still picking burrs out of my jeans from last time." Harper laughed, her camera dangling around her neck. "What about the old Carver School?" The name hung in the air, heavy with legend. Carver High had been shut down in the 90s, left to rot on the edge of town after budget cuts and a fire no one could explain. Kids said it was haunted. Shadows in the windows, voices in the halls, desks that moved on their own. Adults dismissed it, but the stories stuck, growing darker with each telling. I'd driven past it 100 times, its sagging roof and broken windows calling to me like a dare. "That's the one," I said, my pulse quickening. "You in?" Connor groaned but didn't say no. Lila clapped her hands, already grabbing her jacket. Harper's smile was cautious, but her eyes gleamed with curiosity. We packed flashlights, snacks, and a cheap Bluetooth speaker for courage, piling into Connor's rusty Jeep. The night was ours, the moon full and pale, casting Millwood in a ghostly glow. As we drove, Lila cranked the speaker, blasting punk rock that vibrated through the seats. I leaned back, the wind whipping my hair, feeling like nothing could touch us. The road to Carver High was overgrown, gravel giving way to weeds that scraped the Jeep's undercarriage. Trees loomed, their branches twisted like skeletal hands blotting out the stars. My excitement mixed with unease, a knot forming in my gut. When the school came into view, it was worse than I'd imagined. A hulking relic, its brick walls stained with moss, its windows shattered like broken teeth. The chain-link fence was rusted, half collapsed, and the parking lot was choked with tall grass that swayed in the breeze. It didn't look abandoned. It looked wrong, like it was waiting, breathing. Connor parked a safe distance away, killing the engine. The silence was instant, oppressive, broken only by the faint rustle of leaves. "This place gives me the creeps," Harper whispered, clutching her camera. Lila smirked, but her hands were tight around her flashlight. "Come on, it's just a building," I said, forcing bravado, though my own voice sounded thin. Connor sighed, grabbing his light. "Let's get this over with." We approached on foot, the grass brushing our jeans, the air colder than it should have been. My heart pounded, each step heavier than the last. The front doors were boarded up, but a side window was smashed, its frame jagged with glass. I climbed through first, careful not to cut myself, and helped the others. Inside, the school was a tomb, dust thick in the air, the smell of mold and old paper stinging my nose. Our flashlights cut through the dark, revealing a hallway lined with lockers, their doors dented and peeling. Graffiti scarred the walls, names, curses, a faded pentagram that made Lila snort nervously. "Holy shit," Connor muttered, his beam landing on a trophy case, its glass cracked, metal scattered like bones. Harper snapped a photo, the flash stark against the shadows. I led the way, my sneakers echoing, every sound amplified in the stillness. The school felt alive, its silence not empty but watchful, like eyes just out of sight. "Let's check the principal's office," I said, my voice louder than I meant, trying to drown out the unease. The office was a mess. Papers strewn across the floor, a desk flipped, a calendar stuck on June 1997. Lila picked up a file, its pages yellowed, and read aloud, "Student detention records." Boring. But her hands shook, and I knew she felt it too. The weight of the place pressing down. We moved to the classrooms, each one a snapshot of abandonment. Desks askew, books open, chalkboards smeared with half-erased words. One board had a phrase scrawled in red chalk. "They're still here." My stomach twisted. "Kids messing around?" I said, but the words felt hollow. Harper lingered, snapping photos, her breath uneven. "This isn't right, Ethan," she whispered. "It's like it's waiting for something." I wanted to argue, to laugh it off, but the air was heavier now, the shadows thicker. Connor's flashlight flickered and he cursed, smacking it against his palm. "Piece of junk," he muttered, but his eyes darted to the corners. We heard it then. A bang, loud and sharp from deeper in the school. My heart lurched, my flashlight swinging wildly. "What the hell was that?" Lila hissed, grabbing my arm. No one answered. The sound came again, closer, like a door slamming shut. "Maybe it's the wind," Harper offered, but her voice trembled. Connor's jaw tightened. "Screw this. Let's find it." Against every instinct, we followed the noise, our beams bouncing off peeling paint and cracked tiles. The hallway stretched forever, the air colder with each step. Photos lined the walls, class pictures, smiling kids in 90s clothes, their eyes seeming to follow us. My skin prickled, my breath shallow. At the end of the hall we reached the gymnasium, its double doors closed, the handles rusted. The bangs had stopped, but a new sound replaced them, a low rhythmic thump like a heartbeat echoing through the wood. I pushed the doors open, the hinges screaming, and we stepped inside. The gym was massive, our flashlights barely touching the far walls. Bleachers loomed like skeletal remains, and the floor was scuffed, littered with dust and leaves. In the center something stood, a figure, motionless, dressed in tattered clothes, its back to us. My blood ran cold. It was tall, hunched, its shoulders rising and falling as if breathing, though no sound came. The air turned to ice, my breath fogging in front of me. "Who's there?" I called, my voice cracking. No answer. Lila's nails dug into my arm, Harper's camera hung forgotten, and Connor stepped forward, his flashlight shaking. "Hey!" he shouted, bolder than I felt. The figure didn't move, but the thumping grew louder, vibrating through the floor. My mind screamed to run, but my legs were led, rooted by fear and a sick fascination. Then it turned. Slowly, deliberately, its head swiveling to face us. Its face was wrong, pale as bone, eyes sunken black holes, a mouth stretched in a lipless grin. It wasn't human, not anymore. A scream tore from its throat, shrill and guttural, shattering the silence. My flashlight dropped, clattering, and chaos erupted. "Go!" Connor yelled, and we ran, our feet pounding, the scream chasing us like a living thing. The gym blurred past, the hallway a tunnel of panic. I grabbed Lila's hand, Harper's sobs echoing behind me, Connor's curses cutting through the dark. The figure's scream followed, joined by footsteps, heavy, uneven, gaining. My lungs burned, my heart ready to burst, but I didn't look back. We hit the window we'd climbed through, glass crunching underfoot as we scrambled out, tearing skin and clothes. The night air hit us, sharp and freeing, but the scream was still there, fainter but relentless. We sprinted to the Jeep, piling in, Connor fumbling the keys. "Come on!" Lila shrieked, and the engine roared, tires spinning as we peeled out. The school shrank in the rear view, its windows dark but alive, watching. No one spoke, our breaths ragged, the speaker silent. Harper clutched her camera, tears streaking her face. Lila stared out the window, her hands shaking. Connor's knuckles were white on the wheel, and I leaned back, my chest tight. The figure's face burned into my mind. We never went back to Carver High. We didn't talk about it, not really, just fragments late at night when the beer loosened our tongues. Lila started therapy, said she saw those eyes in her dreams. Harper deleted her photos, refused to touch her camera for months. Connor threw himself into work, avoiding me like I'd dragged him into hell. Me? I stopped exploring. The thrill was gone, replaced by dread, a certainty that we'd woken something we couldn't put back. Millwood moved on, but the school stayed, its legend growing. Kids still dared each other to sneak in, oblivious to what waited. I'd drive past sometimes, my heart racing, the building's silhouette a scar on the horizon. At night I'd wake gasping, the scream echoing, the face staring from the dark. I tried to forget, to bury it, but it wouldn't let me. Last week I found something in my mailbox, a photo, grainy and old, of the gym. The bleachers, the floor, and there in the center the figure, its eyes black pits, its grin wide. On the back in faded ink, "You left, but I didn't." I burned it, the ashes scattering, but the fear stayed, cold and endless. Because I know now, Carver High isn't empty. It's waiting. And whatever we met that night is still there, hungry for the next fool to walk through its doors.